showing everyone sitting here watching. Oh, I gotta turn it away.
My name is David Haaften. I'm going to be giving a speech tonight on what you have to go through to become a civilian police officer. Many people ask me, what do you have to do to become a cop, or what does it take to become a police officer? I've been a police officer in both Marion County, Polk County, West Des Moines, and now I work as a DAF officer out at Haaften Air Force Base. You first start out applying, as many people do, to a job announcement in a newspaper or online. These jobs normally are 1 to 5 jobs with many applicants. From 100 to I've tested where we had at least 500 people also take the written test. If you score well enough on the written test, you're invited to take a physical agility test. It is much like the military, where you have to run a mile and a half, push-ups, sit-ups, and some actually have a course where you have to run and complete a certain course in a certain amount of time. After you have completed both of those tests and passed them, you will be invited to take a MMPI-2, which is a Minnesota Multiphasal Personality Inventory. It's sometimes referred to as a psychological test. It's a test between roughly 500 and 567 questions. Some of them are fairly strange, like, do you love your mother? Do you like your mother? And they will repeat those questions throughout different parts of the test. Do you love your father? Do you like your father? Do you like to be the center of attention when speaking in a group, or would you rather not? I don't know how they come up with what they do, but they do come up with a score, and they want most candidates to be appropriately confrontational when need be, but not overly aggressive as an officer. If you pass your MMPI-2, you will go into the background phase, where they look into your background. They also do a credit history check along with your background check, and some departments will actually talk to former spouses or neighbors or references. If you pass that, one of the most difficult and sometimes trying parts of the test is the polygraph. If you pass everything and make it to the polygraph, you are asked normally around 500 questions without being hooked up to the machine. Those 500 questions range from, have you ever lied on a resume? Have you embellished on a resume? Have you called in sick when you weren't sick? Have you ever taken anything from an employer? Have you ever stolen anything from an employer? Have you ever committed a crime with a gun? They go into drug use. Have you ever used drugs? How often have you used drugs? It's very in depth. When you leave there, you almost feel like you've been raped, because you've told people things that you have never told anybody in your life. I mean, I remember stealing a cap gun when I was 13 with a friend of mine from a store. And, people don't know the things you've done, but during the polygraph, they want to know everything. And you're so afraid if you don't mention something like a speeding ticket or a parking ticket, because most of the time they do know all and everything about you. Once you've answered all those questions, they'll go over them with you. After they've gone all those questions with you, they will hook you up to the machine and ask you 10 questions. Of those 10 questions, 5 will normally be control questions. They'll be, is the light on in the room? Is your name, like my name is David, is your name David? Then they'll ask you, besides the drug history we've talked about, have you been truthful about the drug history? Yes or no? Then they'll ask you again, is the Christmas tree green? It's a test to see if you answer the same on truthful questions that they know of. And then they'll ask you other questions. It's very stressful, and they try to paint you out during the process as a liar to see how you react under pressure. I had one good friend that didn't make it through because they kept calling him a liar, and they did with me too, but he got so upset that they were calling him a liar that he walked out of the test. And that's also part of being a police officer, is being able to take people confronting you about things and not losing your cool and So it's all encompassing besides a polygraph. After the polygraph, you will have to do a follow up with a psychiatrist. I'm sorry. They will go over your MMPI test with you and explain the results. After that, normally is your drug test and your actual physical. They check for any type of physical things that would limit your job. And normally after that, you do interview as a deputy sheriff with the Civil Service Board, as a police officer normally with the chief and the higher brass. That is one of the final steps that you take in the hiring process. You will still have to complete a police academy that ranges from 16 to 20 weeks based on your department, and normally 60 to 90 days of OJT with another field officer before you ever become a police officer. This entire test process can take up to a year. But being a civilian police officer, especially if you're young, is a very, very exciting, very fun, and rewarding job. It's up to you to stay physically fit and keep pushing yourself to your limits. Anyway, this completes my speech on how you become a police officer. Thank you for your participation. And good night.